right? So in our file we have 6 columns, right? And now we'll learn how to specify the column type for each of these 6 columns, right? So now when you're reading data, you might come across these different data types, right? One is integer, which doesn't include the decimal values. Double is those numbers which include decimal values. Logical is when you have true or false as your data in the column. Categorical data will include levels, right? This can be like gender, male, female, or education levels like primary, secondary, tertiary, and professional. Um, if your data includes text or string, then it is character. If your data includes date, time, or both, then it is of data type date time or date or time. And then last one is where it's not a data type, it is something that can be used to skip a particular column when you are reading your data, right? So whenever you want to specify a particular data type for a column, you'll use the appropriate function, right? So for integer you will use call underscore integer, for double call underscore double, similarly call underscore logical for logical values, and so on, right? So we'll see how we can use these functions to specify the data type as we read in the data, right? So one thing that we'll see is how to specify the column types, how to skip columns, and how to read only specific columns, right? So the call underscore types function will be used to specify the column data types. Call underscore skip is going to be used for skipping a column, and calls underscore only is going to be used for reading specific columns, right? So we'll start with the first part where we want to specify the column types. Okay, so let us read in this data set again. Read underscore CSV. We bring this to the middle, and then we'll specify the data set. Right now I want to specify the column types, right? So we have 6 columns and I want to specify the column types. Let me just read in this file here once, right? So here you can see the values, right? And if you look at this particular column, first one, female, it is basically a categorical variable or data, right? It takes only 2 values, 0 and 1, and this should have been treated as a categorical variable or qualitative variable, and the data type here should have been call underscore factor, right? So we'll set this right now. So to specify the column types, you'll use the call underscore types argument, right? So let us use it, call underscore types, and then you have to specify the column types for each of these 6 columns, right? And you will supply that inside a function called list, right? So this is a list of data types for each of the columns present in the file, right? So now I'll specify 6 data types. So first one has to be call underscore factor, and then within this I'll specify the categories of this particular variable, right? So for example, in the first column here, the variable female, it has 2 categories, right? 0 and 1. So I'm saying it is a categorical variable and it has 2 categories, right? And the categories are specified using the levels argument, and here I specify the categories which are 0 and 1, right? So I specified the first column. Now let us go to the second column. This is also a categorical variable. So SES here stands for socio-economic status, and it has 3 categories, right? 1, 2, and 3. So again I'll use the call underscore factor function, and I'll specify the levels as 1, 2, 3, right? The third one is, of course, it is an integer, so I'll use call underscore integer. The fourth is also integer, which is right, so again you use the call underscore integer function. The fifth one is numeric, so I'll use call underscore double instead of numeric here because it has decimal values, right? And here you can see the data type is DBL, which is basically double. So whenever you have decimal values in the column, use call underscore double and not call underscore integer, right? And the last one is logical, right? Because it has true and false values, and those are logical values. So we'll use call underscore logical, right? So now let us read this data, right? So here now you can see the difference, right? So when we read the data without specifying the column types, female and socioeconomic status were treated as integers. Now that we have clearly specified that these are categorical variables and we also specified the categories, they are being treated as factor data types. So factor data types represent categorical or qualitative data in R, and we have a separate course where we'll see how to create them and how to handle them, right? So here instead of integer we can see factor, which is FCT, and the next two columns are integers, so you can see they're being treated as integers. Then for score we specified double because it has decimal values, and for status, which has true and false, we have used call underscore logical, right? So whenever you're reading the data set, use spec underscore CSV to see if reader is able to properly determine the data types for each column. If it is not able to do it, then use the call underscore types argument. Use the list function basically because you are giving a list of data types, and then start using these functions, right? Call underscore integer, call underscore logical, call underscore double, you have call underscore factor, you have call underscore date, time, or date and time. So date and time we'll deal with them later as we come across those types of data. But for the time being, I think this will help you because you will be reading in a lot of categorical data and you should know the right way to read them.